Hi friends, today I'm going to be telling you the tale of all tales, otherwise known as the turtle story. A couple years ago in, I believe, spring of 2018, I was driving along with my boyfriend on our way to see Deadpool 2, which is an excellent movie by the way, I highly recommend you watch it. It was a beautiful afternoon, the sun was shining, birds were chirping, the whole shebang. We also took a pretty scenic route to the movie theater, so it was full of gardens and back roads and swampland, and it was just very pretty and nice and oh so fine and doodle dandy. As we were driving along on our merry way, however, we started to realize and joke extensively about the sheer quantity of turtle crossing signs we saw. We probably counted maybe 8 or 9 of them, and where I live, we're pretty used to seeing like deer crossing, equestrian crossing, generic wildlife crossing signs, but never once turtle crossing signs, and certainly not so many in such a short distance. So we go and watch our movie, which was, again, excellent. I highly recommend. And when we got out, it was probably around 8 or 9. It was a little later in the evening. So we're driving home. It's still beautiful out. We have all the windows down. We're blasting the radio. Wind's blowing through our hair. Like, it was just, everything was perfect and right in the world. Or so I thought. Now this part is extremely important to note. How to Save a Life by The Fray comes on, so my boyfriend and I do the only acceptable thing that normal people do when that song comes on, and turn the volume up even louder and start scream singing it at the top of our lungs. In my Fray-induced stupor, however, I failed to realize that I was very quickly approaching something that was in the middle of the road, and when I did finally notice it, I very much struggled to make out just exactly what it was because it was starting to get dark out, my eyesight obviously is not and has never been particularly good, so I'm just trying to figure out what it could be. I figured maybe it's plastic or rubber or a piece of trash or whatever, and I could just drive right over it. No big deal. But when we were about 10 feet from it, much to our horror, my boyfriend and I realized what it was. And you guessed it, it was a turtle. A very large turtle that was just crossing the street, minding its own business, not bothering anyone. I didn't realize how fast I was going, and I was so close to it at that point by the time I actually realized what it was that there was no chance for me to stop or try to swerve out of the way, so I essentially did the only thing that I could do in that situation, and I drove over it. Yeah. I heard its shell scrape the underside of my car, and when I finally had a second to really process what had just happened, I immediately broke down, crying, screaming at the top of my lungs. Oh my god, did I just hit a turtle? I kept frantically checking my rearview mirror, trying to see if it was behind me. I couldn't see it behind me. I didn't know if it got sucked under my car, which in hindsight obviously wouldn't have made sense because he was a large boy and he would not have fit under my 20-year-old grandma car. But the prospect, because I'd never hit an animal before, the sheer prospect of hitting that animal just shook me to my core. My boyfriend was trying to calm me down and essentially just said that we should go back and check. So that's what we did. We turned around, went back to where we saw it originally, and by the time we got there, we noticed that a car had already stopped and someone was out with the turtle actively trying to help it across the street with a large stick. So the turtle was fine, no harm done, probably did more damage to the underside of my car, whatever. My car must have just went right over it. I know that I didn't hit it with any of my wheels, but I was worried that I could have tumbled it with my car or it got sucked under my car or whatever, but totally fine and dandy. And I cannot even begin to tell you the relief I felt in that moment. Again, just the idea of hurting an animal and the bitter irony of listening to How to Save a Life while actively running something over was just a little bit too much for me to bear. So yeah, everything worked out, everything was fine in the end, and I will never ever, for as long as I live, ever again mock a turtle crossing sign. The lesson in all this is drive safely, watch Deadpool 2, and beware of the turtles. That's all I got. I'll see you next time.